Hello, my name is Shermie, and I'm so happy to have you here. So New Horizons has been out for 6 months now, and if you're like me, you're kind of running out of things to do. All there really is waiting for the next visitor or holiday. And that is just not scratching that Animal Crossing itch anymore. I just want to play and play and play and play and play, but there's nothing to do. And as this chart would suggest, many of you are new to Animal Crossing, which suggests the question, is it worth it to go back and play older Animal Crossing titles? 6 months ago, I probably would have told you that it wasn't really worth it. This is because for the past 15 years, I've kind of viewed Animal Crossing as a spectrum, with your base version being Gamecube, and every version since then has kind of added something and improved it. Think like the same game you know and love, just a little bit revised. You know, you got some new features and some better graphics. So obviously, if you have a hankering for an Animal Crossing game, you're gonna get the best gameplay from the newest game. But with New Horizons, the 5th game in the series and all the hype that came with it, that thought process is starting to change a lot for me. A couple months before New Horizons came out, I stumbled upon some people saying that they weren't gonna buy the game unless Nintendo adds more than just crafting to it. And this kind of boggled my mind. I figured most people were like me, and they would be buying it no matter what. As far as I was concerned, as long as they upgraded the graphics, I was down. And anything else they decided to do, it was a nice bonus. And I still don't see a problem with this thinking, since Animal Crossing is about the journey, not the story, and plenty of people have bought second copies of New Leaf or made multiple towns on their Gamecube because they wanted to play the exact same game again but not destroy their previous towns. In my mind, New Horizons was just another copy of Animal Crossing, a new, fresh opportunity to start on that journey of creating a town once again. But then one day I stumbled across the Cubeheads, and they were talking about how the GameCube version was the best game yet, and no game since has ever been able to capture the charm. Of course, they did concede that New Leaf was a pretty good game, and they were very hopeful for New Horizons. And yeah, I totally agree, there was a certain kind of magic to the GameCube game that we haven't really seen yet. But to choose the atmosphere over all the new features? I wasn't sure about that one. I ended up thinking that maybe these guys were just a little bit too nostalgic. But it did rock my mindset a little bit more, and that mindset kept being rocked. When New Horizons came out, there was tons of positivity about the game, with just a little bit of criticism. But in the 6 months since, that little side of criticism has grown to take up almost the full plate, with just positivity being shoved completely to the side. And I've also seen in some circles a lot of people saying they would rather be playing New Leaf or GameCube instead. For those wanting New Leaf, much of it comes from previous features still not being in New Horizons. Sure, they added diving, sure they added art, but where's the vast number of furniture series? Where's the multiplayer games that we did in Tortimer's Island? Also, we are left with no clue when or if any of these things will be returning. So yeah, I can see their point. I'd rather be playing a game that is done than one that isn't. Is New Horizons a good game? Is it better than its predecessors? We'll see? And that is a weird answer to have half a year after a game has been released. Anyway, for those who prefer GameCube, it comes with a longing for previous characters' dialogues and personalities. And I'm not going to get into that because everyone and their mom has. But go ahead and check out Jaden Animation's video here. I think towards the end of that video, she does a really good job of describing the differences in a very interesting way. Basically, it comes down to that villagers are way more bland now than they were in the past, making them way less interesting to interact with. And I can get behind that. They are more bland. Back in Wild World, the highlight of my day was catching 2 villagers talking. I wanted in on that gossip, trust me. But now when I see 2 villagers talking, I'm like, oh, maybe it might be good this time. I love that in Wild World, I guess I'll listen. And then it's like, oh, that was kind of funny. I kind of laughed, but meh. And alas, the final nail in me realizing that all these games are very different comes with me doing this channel and collecting footage for videos. This gives me the opportunity to play the same section of all 5 games at the same time. And it's helped me realize that all these games are very different, and not in a like, oh, the first one's the worst and then they slowly get better, but like all of them have their own strengths and weaknesses. And depending on what you're looking for in an Animal Crossing game, you may gravitate towards one game more than any other because of those. So I would like to talk about what shines in each game. So if you know what you like about New Horizons, maybe you can get a little bit more of that out of a different game. Or experience something that New Horizons is lacking in. And a little disclaimer, I really believe New Horizons could potentially outshine these games one day, but as is, in the areas I'm gonna list, it's just doing okay. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the baseline of New Horizons, and its real strength is aesthetics. This game is absolutely beautiful. Plus, it gives you so much power in how your world looks. You can literally move mountains, then you can cover those mountains in crap. And oh my gravy, don't get me started on the clothes. The clothes are so good. Fill my entire storage, so good. Change my outfit every freaking day, so good. Oh, the aesthetics are wonderful in this game. So word of warning, if you go and play any other Animal Crossing game, the aesthetics are not going to be this good. But they do have the bonus of having different furniture from New Horizons, so that can be pretty interesting to discover all those old series and other things that may never make it to New Horizons. And I have a video right up there talking about those furniture pieces. Okay, New Leaf. If you want a greater overall goal and to have more things to do with friends, then New Leaf is definitely your pal. Despite not starting on a deserted island, you have so much more to work towards as the mayor of an abandoned town. Like in New Horizons, it took me 2 weeks to unlock everything, besides the month it took to get the Nooks upgrade. In New Leaf, it takes about 3 months to work towards getting everything upgraded and moved in. However, unlike the 2 weeks in New Horizons where you feel like you are literally dying waiting for terraforming, New Horizons does a good job of balancing things out so you always feel like you're progressing and unlocking things, despite it taking way longer. Plus, they leave less necessary things for last, like the coffee shop, the fortune teller, the high-end furniture store, so you don't feel like you're missing out on gameplay as you're waiting for everybody to move in. You're neither overwhelmed or left with nothing to work towards to. And when you finally move Katrina in, it is so rewarding seeing your entire main street completed. Unfortunately, because New Horizons will be updated constantly over the next 3 years, you're never going to get that feeling of finishing. That sweet satisfaction. Even though it's great for the game to keep evolving, you'll just never be done. And for playing with friends, there's this whole island where you can do mini games, which is way more a lot super better than wandering around your friend's town wondering if you'll stumble across anything new they've developed. Plus, online is free, so until they shut it down for the 3DS, you can afford to only occasionally get on with friends. For the Switch, 5 years down the road, I'm not gonna want to ante up more money because a friend wants to get together in-game once or twice a year. Only problem for New Leaf is that not everyone's into it right now, so if you do want to play with your friends, you'll have to convince them to buy it, but at least they still stealth the game and it's only about $20, so, maybe go try and convert your friends to have some fun on Tortimer's Island. Now for City Folk. If you want everything right off the bat, this may be the game for you. It has a similar plaza as New Leaf, but instead it's like a bustling city, and on top of that, instead of having to develop it, day one, you arrive in the bus, and everything's already there. Seriously, like even the barber that you had to work to unlock in Wild World and New Leaf, day one, you got it in City Folk. And you don't even have to work towards building up your catalog. If you have a pretty much finished catalog in New Horizons, you can transfer that baby up to City Folk and call it good. Of course, you still have to work towards paying off your house, filling the museum, upgrading nooks, and doing town projects, but this game has the least expensive house expansion of any, and there's barely any new bugs since Wild World, so going from New Horizons to City Folk, it'll be so easy to finish the game. Just a little bit of time traveling and you'll be done. And to be honest, it was kind of difficult to find a strength for City Folk. Of course, it did wonderful things when it came out compared to its predecessors, but now that New Leaf and New Horizons has come out, like, anything that was special about the game has kind of been taken from it. But it does have both the events of Wild World and Gamecube, many of which were either discarded in New Leaf or drastically changed. So it is a good one-stop shop to experience those events. And now I would love to introduce you to Wild World, your place for quality villagers. And I know everyone always talks about Gamecube having the best villagers, bloody, 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 but I disagree. In this game, they were still a little bit rude, but like with a little less edge, and the characters were way more dynamic. They started having conversations with each other, which were absolutely hilarious. And as you talked to them, you could see like their relationships with each other. Like the game tracked the relationships with the animals, whether or not they liked each other. These relationships were so extensive that my best friend literally documented a love triangle that emerged between Cody, Blue Bear, and Stitches in her town. And it is hilarious. And unlike Gamecube, these villagers gave you their picture when you befriended them. And they actually gave you a warning before moving out. They also had interests that they would ask you to help with, like collecting furniture or fossils. Like, I literally remember collecting all the lovely series for Marina. It's a distinct... I could go on and on about these villagers, but I'm gonna go ahead and direct you to Tama's video. She goes into great detail about how the villagers varied from game to game, so you can kind of see the strengths of the Wild World ones there. But in the end, they still had the same depth of personality as Gamecube, while also having way more interactions that you could do with them. Also in Wild World, you got a lot more story from the NPCs. And like every game has had a little bit of this, but not to the level that Wild World has. If you've ever watched one of those videos that's like the background of so-and-so, most likely most of the information in that video came from Wild World, because that's where the NPC stories are. In-game, one day you maybe like walk into Nook's and like he'd be there and you'd kind of see he's depressed, he'd do a little and then you'd talk to him and you could either totally ignore it or there'd be an option to be like, hey, what's going on? And then he'd go in and tell you what's going on in his life. Maybe he's had trouble sleeping, maybe he's worried about his nephews. Like, these little sequences gave you a much deeper look into these characters and they were amazing. You actually got a peek into their lives, making them feel more like an actual character and less like a robot NPC that says the same 5 things over and over and over. So definitely worth giving a playthrough. And now finally for Gamecube. If you are here for simplicity, this game totally has your back. As the first game in this series, Gamecube has a lot less going on, and for some people that really is a good thing. I've heard little whisperings here and there of people finding New Horizons overwhelming. You have this whole terraforming thing, and you have this whole decorating every like square of your island, and it's just a lot. Going back to Gamecube, it's a simpler time. You only have 3 rooms to decorate. Bugs, fish, fossils, art, there's half as many. Clothing? What is this with these accessories and shoes and things? No, don't worry about it. All you have is a shirt. Foliage, you got trees and flowers. If you want to move them, you gotta destroy them. And there's none of this tricky hybrid thing going on. And all this simplicity really allows you to focus on the community. And you're rewarded for doing so with very interesting interactions. Speaking of interactions, there are events in this game that never appear again, which is unfortunate because they're quite enjoyable. And, of course, I have to mention the soundtrack. It is the best of any game, with Wild World being a close second. If you get a chance today, give it a quick Google, Animal Crossing soundtrack, and listen to it, because it's a really, really fun soundtrack. So, in conclusion, yes, they all offer enough differences to warrant giving them a playthrough, especially if you already have the system on hand. So, if you have that Animal Crossing itch that's no longer being scratched, go buy a game secondhand. Play it for a little bit. If you get bored, maybe time travel to future holidays, or mark your real life calendar so you can experience them in their proper time and place. If you decide you're not a fan, then you can officially know that you're not missing out on anything and just sell the game. And of course, if you love the game, then keep the game and keep on enjoying it. And for my personal recommendation, I give you Wild World. I've tried to replay all the old games, but Wild World was the only one that sucked me back in as if I was playing it for my first time. You can play it with a physical copy on DS or 3DS, or you can get a virtual copy on the Wii U, so hopefully you have one of those systems to play it on, because it's all around a really good time playing Wild World. Alright, if you enjoyed this video, please check out some of my other videos and subscribe if you like the direction I'm going in. Thank you so much for watching and have the loveliest of week.